Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, I'm pleased to have on the show for the first time Jason Hunt. Jason owns a company called IT Solutions, which is information technologies. Jason, let's dive back in. We've talked about basically if you're doing business or you're putting private information on your computer and using the web, that it is not necessarily going to be protected in private, number one, and secondly, it can be stolen. The bottom line is you can't fully protect yourself from that. We were talking about the ways you can protect yourself from having the information stolen is number one, to encrypt the data, either the specific data you're concerned about, or if you're using or conveying data to another website, make sure they have a certificate that in essence uses encryption on your own data.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. And when we say encryption, define that for folks. What is that?
Encryption is, say you take a blank text and say, my name is Locke Meredith. And whenever you transmit that information encrypted, it comes across in a bunch of zeros and ones. You don't really see it. It's not plain text.
Okay, so it's coding it in a way that the typical thief, let's say, hacker can't grab it and understand what the heck it means. So it becomes worthless to it.
Correct.
Okay, so that has a deterrent effect, obviously, too. Is a hacker able to determine quickly whether or not information on a particular computer or information is encrypted? Is that something easily?
Yes, they probably easily can see that.
Wow, so bottom line is that's a pretty good step you can take to protect yourself. The other component of this, another thing that you can do to protect yourself is, I guess, limit or control where you keep your information, right?
Correct.
And as I understand it, you have two options these days. One is on your own private server. We've heard about Hillary Clinton and her private emails on her private server. And literally the government wanted it and couldn't get to it, and she erased apparently thousands of emails. But the reason she could do that is she had the information there.
Correct.
All right. The alternative to that is storing it on the cloud. What is the cloud?
The cloud is a off-site location across the world, and they can have what they call server farms, and they house that information in different servers across the world.
So it's not like this, I remember when I heard cloud, I thought, wow, there's like all the computers somehow connect up in the world, space somewhere, and all the information stored somehow. It's not a big giant computer in the sky.
It's not, no.
It's somebody who has a ton of computer storage space in a building somewhere or multiple locations all over the U.S. or world, and they're, instead of storing it on your computer, you're sending it to them and they're storing it on their computer.
That is correct.
Okay, now, is there a reason why you would choose not to use the cloud and instead use a private server?
When you have a private server locally, you are in control of that server. Someone has to physically come into your office, plug into your network to access that information, or port forward it through a firewall or something like that. When you have it in the cloud, it's just more accessible to, like you said, third-party hackers hacking through the firewalls at those server farms, and they get all that information, like Target and the companies you were talking about.
To those big business?
That's correct.
Okay.
They're leaving it. There's so much information, so many vulnerabilities that they are easily getting hacked. When you have one server here locally at your office,
I guess you're not as much of a target either.
That's right. I mean, you would have to be very specific on what you wanted to do to hack your office.
Interesting. So you mentioned the word firewall, and you said a private server can have a firewall system, or I assume the clouds also have a firewall system, and the cloud people would say, oh, it's the best firewall in the world. What is a firewall?
A firewall is, it can be a software firewall, it can be a hardware firewall.
Okay.
Firewall is a piece of software, a piece of hardware that blocks ports. When you come into your network, certain ports are opened up to do different things, printing, saving files, VPN, that type of thing. When those ports are open through a firewall, it's like opening a window without a screen and allowing all them bugs to come through your window.
Interesting.
When you have a firewall in place, then what happens is it gets masked, it gets blocked. All those ports are closed. Now, if you need to open a certain port for a particular piece of software or an item that you're trying to do or use, then those ports are opened up and they are covered with like a tunnel to where they are protected and encrypted.
Interesting. So I'm trying to fully comprehend what you're saying, and you're talking about ports, and so my simple mind goes, okay, when I'm using my computer, do I have to be trying to connect to an outside computer for the firewall to be effective or be needed? Or is it just me sitting on my computer at home, but connected to the web but not really using it?
Well, connected to the web, you're usually using 1 or 2 ports. You're using port 80, which is an open port. And that is open everywhere.
Okay.
That's what allows like different websites to
Send you stuff.
send you information.
Interesting.
Email ports are open, so you can receive email when you open up the attachments, and that's usually where you have the viruses and stuff like that. That's whenever you need to get virus protection.
So that leads to this question. When you're not using your computer, should you disconnect it from the web? You know how you can shut off the...
If you're at home and you're just on a regular internet service and stuff like that, I would probably turn it off if you're not using it.
And does that eliminate the ability for a hacker to get to you or
That is correct.
information related to that computer to be monitored
correct.
by these privacy guys?
It's like turning your car off and pulling the keys out and locking the door, and nobody can do it.
So that's the number one thing you can do right there.
In a business environment, like a small business or medium business, they always have firewalls and software firewalls and virus protection. In fact, you really don't have to need to turn it off and unplug it, because if you have someone that has set you up properly and has you correctly secured, then you don't have no need for
Well,
that.
and the bottom line is those folks want their nets on because there's billions of dollars of business that takes place 24 hours a day, so you're going to want your computer system working.
Correct.
So for an individual though, sitting at home, number one, if you're not using the internet, turn it off. Number two, if you are using it, just by turning it on, I'm opening a port, and so I'm susceptible to being hacked.
In a sense, yes.
If I use the computer and connecting to other websites, as I understand it, that doesn't necessarily open up another port?
No, sir, it does not.
Okay. So really the way you're whacked and hacked is by turning on the computer and connecting to the web.
The potential of being
And
hacked.
the way to shut it down is one, turn off the web when you're not using it, or have a firewall.
That's correct.
Okay. And are there better firewalls than others?
Yes.
And how do you know which?
You get what you pay for.
Okay. That's pretty simple
Simple-
little
it's as simple as what it is.
saying, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So the bottom line is the expensive ones, I guess, are what? They cover more ports. They have a broader spectrum of protection.
They have more functionality and more usability to be able to crank down the ports that are not being accessed and open in the ones that they do.
Very interesting. All right. So we talked about the susceptibility by having your computer on and connect to the web. Let's talk about if you go to another website. As I understand it, there's security concerns there because that is how viruses, you hear the term viruses, are infected into your computer. Explain to folks what we're even talking about there.
Well, everybody's been used to browsing for something, looking for something on the internet that you're not used to looking at, not going to your bank site, going to something, searching or Google searching. You come to these different sites and they have pop-ups and redirections on the website.
And so if you connect them, all right, we'll continue this on the next subject. This is Locke Meredith Legal Lines. My guest Jason Hunt. We're talking about computer security. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power, and I want you to know if you're injured and you have lost wages because of that injury, Louisiana law gives you a claim for that loss. Typically, it's going to require medical evidence from a medical doctor stating because of your injuries, you can't work. It's a pretty simple claim. If you had a job before the injury, doc says you can't work from the date of the accident, and 3 months later he says you can work, you can figure out what you've lost in wages. Circumstances occur, however, when the injury results in permanent physical and functional limitations. Now you can't do the job according to the doctor that you could do before the accident. So the question becomes, is there any work you can do, and what is the difference in wages? But the court doesn't just look at what you earned in the past, it also looks at your earning capacity. That is your ability to earn wages in the future, promotions, additional education. So my Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is make sure you know your rights when you're presenting that lost wage claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.